Hey everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman here. Hope you're having a great day. Amazon best-selling author of Inside Out Health and ACA Sports Council Chiropractor of the year 2015. I'm here to spend the next 30 minutes or so really talking about some interesting topics. We're going to talk about invest in your brain, nutritional protocols for cognitive health. Without question, the brain has taken everybody's by storm. So many people are talking about brain health. Even with the advent of COVID-19, people are still talking about brain health, how to keep that cognition in all the things that feed to the brain. What's most interesting about the brain is we can't live without one. So we always have to nourish it. Everything feeds the brain. We're going to talk about the gut-to-brain axis. We're going to talk about the brain-to-gut axis. We're going to talk about diet. We're going to talk about environment, specific nutrition, and of course some supplements that'll really help you reach certain clinical outcomes that we all are looking for, and if we're practitioners, that we can share with our patient base, our families, our friends, etc. So, as we all know, June is Brain Awareness Month. Without question, it's an excellent time to look at the current state of age-related cognitive decline. The costs are staggering. In 2020, it's been estimated that it'll cost the nation about $305 billion, rising at as high as $1.1 trillion in 2050. That's not counting the work of 16 million Americans who are unpaid caregivers. We're really talking about in neurodegenerative disease. I think we're most precisely speaking to the concept of Alzheimer's disease. And I'm going to break down specific things in Alzheimer's. I'm going to break down specific proteins. We're going to talk a little bit about the blood-brain barrier. I may even speak about testing. What I'd love everybody to do is to like, comment, share, and please do me a favor. Ask questions. I've got somebody there. I am working off my phone. They will ask the question. They will reiterate your question, and I'll be very happy to answer them all. I have no rush. I'm willing to stay longer. Ask the questions. It's a Friday. I'm looking forward to really talking about cognition, cognitive health, and brain health. Alzheimer's is a very interesting disease because I just gave a lecture last week. I gave a virtual lecture, and everybody thinks it ends or starts in the brain, but it really ends in the brain. So we talk a lot about amyloid plaque. We talk about tau tangles. The amyloid actually comes from release in the gut. So when people understand that it's a multifaceted, multi-pathway approach to our brain, people realize that Alzheimer's needs a multitude of approaches to be able to ameliorate the issues and the high rate of occurrence. You know, we know a lot of people who have lived through cancer. We really don't know anybody to date who's lived through Alzheimer's. Our goal is to be able to diminish that, and our goal is to be able to have people not have the symptomology of Alzheimer's. Some of the interesting things about neurodegenerative disease or brain disease is that they're early signs. There are some studies now that speak to the idea of neurofilament light, which is a protein enzyme, that will show you that 16 years in advance, you know that you have an earlier onset or a early predilection to Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative disease. The blood-brain barrier. So let's cover that right now. The blood-brain barrier, which actually filters, it encases the bulk of the brain, doesn't touch the pituitary gland, filters about 400 miles of arteries. In that filter, it's filtering blood to and fro. That blood-brain barrier is made of the same protein as your gut barrier, and it's the same thickness. It has the thickness of a wet paper towel. The issue with it, if the blood-brain barrier is damaged or becomes too permeable, there are objects or proteins that can pass that blood-brain barrier and get into the brain. Now, the unfortunate thing is if they get into the brain, obviously they're going to stimulate neurodegeneration. It's going to damage brain tissue. Whereas if you have a gut issue, and we're going to get to gut health in a little while, if you have a gut issue, you have this ability or this immune system which may be able to quell the inflammation and quell your body's response. So the bottom line, the takeaway here is if you've got leaky gut, it will give you leaky brain as a 35,000-foot view. But the bottom line is if you have a leaky gut, you still have the ability not to damage the blood-brain barrier. Once that blood-brain barrier is damaged, you can have neurodegeneration, and you're going to have conditions that lead you down a deleterious brain health path. Like I said, feel free to ask any questions. Let's talk a little bit about awareness and prevention. Despite the human financial cost of age-related cognitive decline, awareness and prevention are still the best approaches. So everybody needs to be aware that we are all, in some way, shape, or form, in our current environment, possibly susceptible to neurodegenerative disease. And without question, as alternative practitioners, prevention is still the key. I always try to imbue all my patient base with enthusiasm to please be preventative and not reactive. Be proactive. Don't be reactive. Once you have the damage, it's going to be real hard, although you can, to reverse the damage. Let's value our health. If we've learned anything through this COVID-19 epidemic or health pandemic, if you will, we've learned that health is wealth, and we need to protect ourselves, protect our immune system, and believe it or not, our brain is a major player in our overall immune system. The brain changes that happen in failing cognitive function probably begin years, possibly 20 years or longer, before symptoms such as memory changes become apparent. Because it occurs so slowly, it's possible that being aware of your risk and being alert to the earliest signs can help manage the changes as they happen. Making dietary and lifestyle changes, without question, can help. So let's talk about dietary and lifestyle changes. Well, Alzheimer's, we'll use that as an example, used to be what we call diabetes type 3. It was a overuse or inability to regulate glucose. So obviously, strong suggestion is decrease the amount of sugar. So decrease that amount of sugar. The average American consumes 160 pounds of sugar per year. That's about 6.3 cups. It's 18 teaspoons per day. It is without question a voluminous amount of sugar. Sugar works with the reward center in the brain. It's extraordinarily ruinous to different parts of the body. Obviously, your gut and your brain are damaged for an overuse of sugar. It's going to be something interesting that we're going to talk about when we talk about different foods and the organic component. And I'm going to get to that in a second. Dietary, lifestyle, exercise. Nothing helps the brain more than exercise. Low level, not that intense exercise, really not that good. Really high level, high intense exercise, maybe not that good. It's sort of a U-shaped curve. So you want to exercise because exercise allows for the release of something called BDNF. Brain-derived neurotrophic factors. Those BDNFs allow for brain neurogenesis. So even if you're losing, if you will, neuronal impulses, you have the ability to recover. Lifestyle, good quality foods like raw cruciferous vegetables, we're going to get to the supplements, are going to enable you to produce those BDNF and really going to allow to keep that brain in pristine condition. The environment, we want to avoid toxins. I mean, people are turning in and not realizing what a toxic world we live in. Those toxins can damage, and they can damage our brain. Sleep is a lifestyle. Sleep enables us to actually detox and get rid of metabolic waste. Our brain actually shrinks to 40% of its size at night, and when it squeezes and shrinks down, it gets rid of all the metabolic waste like amyloids and tau. So 7 to 8 good hours of sleep is a critical element. Believe it or not, sleeping on your side, your left side, has shown to be the most effective position to detox your brain and enable you to get rid of metabolic waste. Some other lifestyles or other foods are gluten and dairy. We've spoken about them before. Gluten means glue, sticks to your intestinal tract. But as some famous functional medicine doctors have said, let's stop talking about what gluten does to our gut, because whatever we do to our gut, we do to our brain. Let's start talking about what gluten does to our brain. Gluten means glue. It sticks to intestinal tracts in the blood-brain barrier. It's damaging. Most of the gluten, other than the fact that it's glue, has also been made in a soil that has Roundup, which has glyphosate. Glyphosate, to me, is an anchor. The World Health Organization has called it a cancer-promoting chemical, but it also anchors down the gluten so it lays on the barriers to stimulate the inflammation, and coupled with the fact that all the pesticides are making these different food proteins. Remember, gluten is a protein. These proteins aberrant and changing the configuration of the food protein, giving you food sensitivities, increasing inflammation in the body. Inflammation in the body, segueing to inflammation in the brain. A critical element is, without question, diet and lifestyle changes that'll be needed to help with brain health. I can't emphasize it enough. I'm all about the supplements, and we're going to talk about them. Supplemental to lifestyle changes. The first thing we all need to do is sit down and make those needed lifestyle changes. We use the supplements because they have specific nutrients in an abundance that we can't get from foods or a high enough amount of foods. Remember, depleted or damaged cells cannot be repleted by even good food fast enough. Hence the idea of the specificity of the supplements, which are going to come up in the succeeding statements. One thing that we know is having a genetic variant of APOE4 gene does increase your risk. Everybody should go test for APOE4 gene. The gene makes a protein that helps carry cholesterol in the bloodstream. It comes in different forms or alleles. One variant, known as APOE4, increases the risk of age-related cognitive decline. We actually have two alleles. So you get one from mommy and you get one from daddy. So it's kind of like a division. So if you have 4 over 4, you've got a high incidence, a high chance of being predictive of possibly getting Alzheimer's. If you have a 3 is the most common. 70% of Americans have a 3. 3 is fine, but if you're a 3-4, you still have a high incidence of getting Alzheimer's. So let me take a step back. The APOE, which is chromosome 19, is an APO2, an APO3, and an APO4. If you have 2, which is like 1% of the population, it's great. Your chances precipitously drop of you getting Alzheimer's. 3, common. I happen to be a 3 over 3. Typically, you're not going to get Alzheimer's unless you have faulty environment, faulty diet, faulty lifestyle. Remember, we do not live in a healthy world. America, unfortunately, is not healthy. APOE4 is that cholesterol marker. By the way, just as an aside, those people who have APOE4 have a higher incidence and a more severe case of COVID-19 because APOE4 has been shown to be an inflammatory marker. So 4 or 4 over 4 are your highest incidence. Very simple genetic tests, very popular, blood tests, cheek swab, anything like that. As a practitioner, I test everybody for APOE4. Approximately 25 to 30% of the population in the U.S. has this variant. It's important to note that the E4 risk factor gene, having it doesn't necessarily mean you'll develop age-related cognitive decline later in life. And having a different variant doesn't protect you. So let's expand on that. So if you're 25 and you have an APOE4 on the bottom or APOE4 on the top and the bottom, now's your time to change your lifestyle. Personally, it doesn't matter if you have a 2 or 3. Everybody should eat a healthy lifestyle. Decrease your sugar. Decrease the foods that you may be sensitive to. Without question, we know the more common foods are gluten, dairy, eggs, and lectin. Try to use whole foods. Whole foods, whole organic foods are a better choice. When you get to the idea of process what have they done? Well, they've processed the food. So number one, when you really look about it or think about it, at the top level, these pesticides can cause a lot of damage to your food proteins. Then when you look at the food processing, you begin to realize that the food processing, it's almost like a GMO. It's not a real food. And then food colorings. That would be the trifecta leading to the sequela of failing health, whether you have an APO2, 3, or 4. Got to change what you consume. Some other signs of overall poor health combined with APOE4 variant nearly triple your risk of developing failing cognitive function. You can't do anything about having the allele. It's the card that you were given, but you can certainly make healthy dietary and lifestyle changes. I can't emphasize enough that it's all a choice. So many of my patients have that APOE4, literally almost a third, and it's an immediate lifestyle change. So if you have any questions, right then and there is a question that I would strongly recommend reach out and ask me about the APO4, E3, and 2. And if you're going to change anything today, start eating a healthier diet. Amyloid and tau. Your brain is, just so everybody knows, is made of the consistency of Jell-O. That's right, Jell-O. It's 3 pounds. It takes about 20% of the newly oxygenated blood, and it requires 25% of your caloric intake. Your brain also contains about 100 billion neurons, forming approximately 100 trillion connections known as synapses with each other. The synapses from the brain circuits are the mechanism for memory, thought, emotion, sensations, and movement. I always call the brain the chip. Nothing happens without registering in the brain. Brain is an interesting thing. We may forget trauma. We may forget environmental toxin, but our brain and our immune system never does. One of the hallmarks of failing cognitive function is the disruption of brain circuits by accumulating proteins both inside and outside the neurons. Beta amyloid plaques build up outside neurons. It is an abnormal form of the protein tau buildup inside the neurons. So let's make that distinction. Amyloid outside, tau or tau tangles. Just think of it tangling up inside, amyloid waiting on the outside. Both proteins cause the characteristic brain changes of age-related cognitive decline by gradually harming neurons. Amyloids, as I said earlier, come from the gut. They come from the gut when you have leaky gut, or what I'd like to refer to as increased intestinal permeability. A lot of the increased intestinal permeability leads you down a path of the release of something called an endotoxin, which that endotoxin is referred to as lipopolysaccharide, or LPS. When that is released, you're now able to have certain amyloids that come from your gut, and they're able to make their way through your bloodstream to your blood-brain barrier. If your blood-brain barrier is too permeable, the amyloid gets in, lays down, bad lifestyle, no sleep, amyloid starts to plaque, press on it, and you've got this cognitive dysfunction because you have this weighted plaquing on your neurons. So it is a cascade, but there are other facets that occur to that also because your gut and your brain communicate with each other. They do so 3 different ways. I just described it. Number 1, through bloodstream. Number 2, there's hormonal communications. And number 3, maybe the biggest communication is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is cranial nerve number 10. It goes from the medulla oblongata down through the transverse colon, and it senses what goes on inside the gut. So it's attached to the outside, if you will, of the transverse colon, and it's afferent, it's sensory. It's about 80 to 90% afferent. It senses the microbiota inside the gut. Hence, we're going to talk about a probiotic. It senses that, and it speaks through communication to the brain. What's most interesting is that LPS and the change in the microbiota stimulates something called toll-like receptor 4. That toll-like receptor 4 talks to the vagus nerve and is communicating that LPS has been released, and then you're getting poor health signals and poor digestion, and everything that's going on adverse in the gut, we're going to get to that in more detail, goes to your brain. So let's just remember that the amyloids are on the outside, the taus are on the inside. Now let's talk about the first product that I'd like to detail in addition to lifestyle, and that's called Amyloid Benefits. It's a supplement designed to reduce the formation of damaging amyloid plaques and tau tangles in the brain. Amyloid Benefits contains curcumin, a natural chemical found in turmeric root that plays a vital role in downregulating tau and amyloid production. Curcumin is known to decrease the inflammatory pathway of NF-kappa B. When NF-kappa B is stimulated, NF-kappa B can lead to the release of specific cytokines, which releases interleukins, and hence the idea of inflammation, cytokine storm, and the like. Curcumin, without question, a bioavailable curcumin like we're using here, is really vital to overall manage and modulation of inflammation through the body, and especially in the brain. Additionally, curcumin also stimulates or turns on the NRF2 antioxidant pathway. This is a critical antioxidant pathway that ultimately makes L-glutathione. NRF2 pathway is in phase 2 of the liver. This L-glutathione is the master antioxidant in your body, and it's shown when released to decrease brain tissue damage by 70%. So we have to understand that specific nutrients are stimulants, upstream stimulants and pathways to stimulate specific health events. So for me, a lot of people like to say, well, nutrients work like drugs. Drugs kind of shut pathways off. The way I like to look at nutrients is they sort of like turn pathways on and off. And curcumin is a great example because it's decreasing an inflammatory pathway in the NF-kappa B, but also increasing the NRF2. Research suggests that curcumin can help normalize plasma beta amyloid concentrations and bind to tau proteins, preventing them from forming clumps and tangles and even helping breaking them down. So the takeaway is, for the amyloid benefits, supports normal beta amyloid levels, promotes cognitive performance, supports memory and mood, helps to counteract everyday oxidative stress, and it's a highly bioavailable system. So let's move on, because I thought that you would enjoy that concept of the brain health. In addition, now let's get to brain health. And in brain health, we're really going to talk about omega-3 fatty acids. A healthy lifestyle as you age protects your body and your brain. Poor diet, smoking, drinking alcohol, being overweight, and out of shape are independent risk factors for age-related cognitive decline. In combination, they raise your risk even more. These are the comorbidities. Obesity, without question, is the number one comorbidity that we all talk about, because obesity means that you're inflamed, and all these neurodegenerative diseases are misplaced inflammatory markers. So we always want to manage and modulate that inflammation, like we said before. One of the reasons that these risk factors can reduce blood circulation to the brain is which is a cause of brain decline. In addition, making the needed dietary and lifestyle changes, brain health can be promoted by what we call brain benefits supplements. That's added omega-3 fatty acids. Now, interesting that omega-3 fatty acids, for me, are one of the number one go-to supplements that I would recommend. Omega-3 fatty acids increase blood circulation. They've also shown to help promote a healthy inflammatory response. They've also shown to be more anti-amyloid and anti-tau. They're fabulous omega-3 fatty acids for cell membrane health. They aid in the biodiversity of the gut, and if it's the gut-brain communication that we want to support, not just supporting the brain, omega-3 fatty acids with those biodiversity are a critical element. And guess what? Omega-3 fatty acids block that earlier comment about toll-like receptor 4 stimulating the inflammatory pathway going to your brain through your vagus nerve. Believe it or not, omega-3 fatty acids can block that toll-like receptor 4 and decrease that. So without question, brain health, or what we like to refer to as brain benefits, omega-3 fatty acids are a great choice. As I said earlier, it's probably one of my top 3 sellers in my office. And when I lecture to other doctors and lecture to consumers, everybody knows to take omega-3 fatty acids. Some people say, well, can I get it from food? Of course you can. Let's eat some smashed fish, wild smashed fish, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. The only unfortunate thing is eat them, but when you go ounce for ounce, or if you will, milligram for milligram, the supplement still is much cheaper. So hence the idea of supplements, because I believe you need a large amount of omega-3 fatty acids to fill your cell membrane. It's not 1 or 2 grams. The studies have really shown omega-3, EPA, and DHA, you need approximately 2 to 4 grams of them on your own to build the cell membrane. If you have neurodegenerative disease or acute neurodegenerative disease or like a concussion, you're going to need a lot more than just that. So power your brain with EPA and DHA. It's a liquid. I've always tried to rely more on the liquids. They get into the body quicker. It promotes memory, learning, concentration, and mood, encourages a healthy immune response. And guess what? It tastes good because it's scented. It doesn't taste, EPA and DHA are different than cod liver oil. My mom, who's past 90, says, oh, is it going to taste like that? And she takes it every day, and she says, this is nothing like I took 80 years ago. It doesn't have that fishy taste. Now we get to something that's very important to me. It's something that I talk about in virtually all my lectures, and that's gut health. And again, feel free to ask any questions about what we're talking about. I need you to like, I need you to comment. I will answer any questions that you leave on the Da Vinci site. I appreciate you taking time out, whether it's now live or if it's going to be later, if you will, Memorex. Ask the questions. If you have any questions about the supplements, somebody will talk to you. Lifestyle, diet will get you what you need. We're here for you. So gut health. As I said earlier, brain health is closely linked to gut health. But the question is what really ties them together. Cognitive function is directly affected by the inflammatory response in the brain, which originates in an imbalance of gut bacteria. So I looked up some studies before. I'm using my blog here. I looked up some studies, but you can look for a plethora and see all the studies are now talking about the gut-to-brain axis and the brain-to-gut. Whatever you do to your gut, you do to your brain. I said that. So if you would eat something that would irritate your gut, like a gluten, it would be a millisecond that it would communicate with your brain. And the problem is when it goes to your brain, you're going to get a secondary communication from your brain to gut and come back up. So it's this circle. It's this circle. In 2016, 60 older adults with significant loss of cognitive function had a blood test called C-reactive protein, or high-sensitive C-reactive protein. It's a powerful marker of an inflammatory response. They divided these people into two groups. 30 ate their normal diet plus a drink that contained probiotics, beneficial bacteria. Probiotics, pro-life. The other 30 had a normal diet plus a placebo drink, but didn't include any probiotics. After 12 weeks, the blood was tested again. The placebo group showed no increase in high-sensitive C-reactive protein, but the probiotic group dropped significantly, vertiginously, if you will, 18%. They showed an improvement in markers on cognitive tests, whereas the placebo group's cognitive test declined. So this would just emphasize some of the many benefits of a probiotic. So the Mega Probiotic ND50 supplement delivers multiple strains. It's an essential tool for supplying healthy brain health, supporting that brain health. It does so by supporting the gut, and it has multiple strains, so it gets both upper and lower GI. Some of the things that you want to really understand is when you have a probiotic, one like this, and you eat a good quality food, good quality foods like Jerusalem artichoke, onions, leeks, they're prebiotics. They feed these probiotics. These probiotics then make what we call a postbiotic. This postbiotic may be a butyrate, and this butyrate has all this health enforcing type of properties also. But the key component to this probiotic is one, that you take it. Number two, you're taking it, it's got 50 billion plus colony forming units. Really, really a robust amount of colony forming units, and there's 7 different ones, many of which are Lactobacilli acidophilus, Rhamnosus. Rhamnosus is really shown to help with vagal nerve tone and stimulation. Casei, L. salivarius. L. salivarius in certain studies have helped with tight junction damage. Bifidobactam longum. Longum is another one that helps with what we call vagal tone. And it comes with a prebiotic FOS, so it's coming with the food. So with all these 50 plus colony forming units, you're then able to, without question, get enough probiotics, good bacteria in there, because you want to avoid dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is an unleveling of good and bad bacteria. You need about 85% good bacteria not to have dysbiosis, but it's the diversity. That's why there's 7 strains. The diversity of the garden of your gut, the superpower. That's going to communicate with your brain so you have a good quality gut-to-brain axis. So far we've talked about the amyloid benefits. We've talked about brain benefits, fish oils. Now we're talking about Mega Probiotic ND50. And let's end with cortisol. And then if we have any questions, you'll let me know if there's any questions, and we'll answer them, and we'll move on. So cortisol. High levels of the stress hormone cortisol are associated with age-related cognitive decline due to alterations in the hippocampus, the big seahorse, that's what it means in Latin, and prefrontal cortex in the brain. While stress reduction techniques such as yoga and meditation without question help stress, and we should all consider them, they may not be sufficient enough to maintain cognitive function in the face of high cortisol levels. When is cortisol highest? Stress or in the morning. The cortisol supplement, Cortisol Benefits, supplies healthy cortisol levels and helps the body adapt to stress. Healthy cortisol levels help with concentration and mental energy to supplement improved cognitive performance and improves cortisol levels. So cortisol benefits work very synergistically. So in my brain package, if you will, there's 4 supplements. I've always found if you want to make a kit or a package, you want to have 3 to 5 products. 3 at the bottom end, 5 at the top end. Right now we're talking about 4. And let's not forget, within those 4, we're talking about amyloid benefits, mega probiotics, cortisol benefits, and brain benefits. We're also trying to talk to them about lifestyle, environment, overall how the body works. What I find is that when people come in and you talk to them about these needed changes, they understand it more, as opposed to just giving them the supplement or just telling them no gluten. It's a combination. Exercise. And let's not forget, let's test them. If that's available for us, let's not guess. So now if we have any questions, I know it's been really quiet. I know it's a beautiful Friday in the Northeast. I can see the sun out through my window. And if we don't, every month we're going to be doing something like this. We're going to have different approaches. We're going to talk about the foods in an upcoming month. I think it'll be August, to speak to the idea of what foods we want to do for brain health. We're going to have a big one in September, my understanding on concussion. Any questions? Feel free. Any likes, shares, do all that. Any shout outs? I've had a great time. You saw all your 4 supplements, your lifestyle. It's been my pleasure. Dr. Rob, always yours in health.